Hey, this has been weighing on me for a long time, and I think it's finally time to let it out. My family situation has always been frustrating, but I never thought it would come to this. Even now, I'm still processing everything, so sit back, because this is one of those stories that'll make you shake your head in disbelief. A little about me: I'm Ethan, 27 years old. I've always been the responsible one, the one who handled things while my younger brother, Ryan, skated through life. He's 23 now, and if there's one thing he's mastered, it's getting everything handed to him without lifting a finger. Growing up, my parents, Dad and Lisa, always pushed the idea that hard work was the only way to succeed, but somehow, that rule only applied to me. I was expected to do chores, run errands, and basically be the extra adult in the house. Meanwhile, Ryan, he was treated like royalty. He got everything: gadgets, vacations, expensive clothes, while I was constantly reminded that life isn't fair and I had to earn my place. But the real slap in the face, that came when Ryan graduated. And when I say graduated, I mean barely. He scraped by with the lowest possible grades, yet my parents acted like he'd just won a Nobel Prize. They threw him a party, huge decorations, fancy cake, all their friends over to celebrate. And me, I was just there. Then came the gifts. Ryan got a brand new car. Not just any car, something expensive, sleek, and completely unnecessary for someone who had never worked a day in his life. Later, I found out my parents had taken out a loan to pay for it. A loan for a kid who had never paid a bill in his life. And then it was my turn. For a split second, I let myself hope. Not for a car, obviously, but maybe something meaningful. Something that showed they actually valued me. Dad handed me a small box. I already had a bad feeling. Inside, cleaning supplies. A pack of sponges, some dish soap, a few microfiber cloths, and just to really drive it home, a pair of rubber gloves. I stared at it, my mind blank. "Oh, come on, Ethan," Lisa said with a smile. "You're always so responsible. We figured this would be practical." Ryan, of course, was smirking. "Yeah, bro. Now you can keep everything spotless, just like you love to do." I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. This wasn't just a bad gift. This was a statement, a reminder of what they saw me as. I stood up, gripping the box so tightly my fingers ached. "I need some air." Lisa sighed. "Oh, Ethan, don't be dramatic." I didn't respond. I just grabbed my jacket and walked out the front door. I could hear them calling after me, but I didn't care. The cold night air hit my face, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. I walked for hours, my thoughts racing. It wasn't just about tonight. It was years of being overlooked, years of watching Ryan get rewarded for doing nothing while I worked myself to exhaustion. Eventually, I ended up at my friend Leo's place. I shot him a quick message, and 5 minutes later, he was at the door with 2 beers in hand. I told him everything, every last detail. Leo shook his head. "Dude, that's actually insane." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, and the worst part, I don't even know what to do. I can't keep living like this, but what other option do I have?" Leo leaned forward. "You leave," I scoffed. "And go where?" "Anywhere. You've been taking care of yourself for years. You don't need them, Ethan. Stop waiting for them to appreciate you. Walk away and build your own life." His words settled deep in my chest. I wasn't sure if I was ready to admit it, but he was right. I didn't owe them my time, my energy, or my sacrifices. For the first time, I considered what it might feel like to walk away. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized. I was already halfway out the door. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind kept circling back to the same thought: was I really going to do this? Was one actually going to leave? By the time the sun started creeping through the blinds, I had my answer. Yeah, I was. Leo was still asleep when I grabbed my phone and started looking up apartments. I didn't have a ton of savings, but I had enough to get started. I figured I could find something small, just enough space for myself. Somewhere that wasn't filled with the weight of my parents' expectations and Ryan's smug existence. It didn't take long before I found a place, a studio, about 20 minutes from where I worked. Not glamorous, but I didn't need glamour. I just needed a fresh start. By noon, I had signed the lease. Now, I just had to pack. Walking back into my parents' house, I half expected them to greet me with some kind of fake concern. "Oh, Ethan, where were you? We were so worried." But nope, not even a text. Lisa was in the kitchen making tea, acting like everything was normal. Dad was on the couch, flipping through channels. And Ryan? He was outside, admiring his new car like it was a trophy he had earned instead of something handed to him. It was almost funny. They hadn't even noticed I was gone. I didn't say a word, just went straight to my room and grabbed my duffel bag. I was halfway through packing when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Lisa appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "What are you doing?" I didn't look up. "Packing," she scoffed. "Packing for what? I'm moving out." That got her attention. "Excuse me?" I zipped up the bag and finally turned to face her. "I'm done, Mom. I signed a lease this morning." For a moment, she just stood there, blinking, like she couldn't process the words coming out of my mouth. "You're overreacting, Ethan," I laughed under my breath. "Right, overreacting. That's what you think this is?" She stepped into the room, lowering her voice. "You can't just leave like this. You're part of this family." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I'm the extra set of hands you use when you don't feel like doing something. That's not family. That's convenience." Lisa's face twisted into something I couldn't quite read. Guilt? Annoyance? Maybe a mix of both. "We've done so much for you," I cut her off. "No, Mom, you did so much for Ryan." I just picked up the slack. I should have stopped there. Should have just walked out. But of course, Ryan had to make an entrance. "Wow," he said, leaning against the doorframe with that smug grin of his. "So, what? You're running away because you didn't get a car?" I let out a slow breath. "This has nothing to do with the car, Ryan." "Oh, come on," he said, rolling his eyes. "It's so obvious. You're jealous. That's what this is about." I clenched my fists. Jealous? No, I'm exhausted. I've spent years cleaning up after you, making sure everything ran smoothly while you sat around and got spoiled. And now I'm done. Ryan laughed. Actually laughed. "You're not gonna make it on your own." That was the last thing he said before I grabbed my bag, pushed past him, and walked out. Lisa and Dad didn't try to stop me. Maybe they thought I was bluffing. Maybe they figured I'd come crawling back when things got tough. They had no idea just how wrong they were. The apartment was small, just one room, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom that barely fit a shower, but it was mine. For the first time in my life, I had my own space. No one expecting me to do their laundry, no one handing me a list of chores, no one treating me like an afterthought. It was quiet, almost too quiet. That first night, I just sat on the floor, staring at the bare walls, wondering if I had made the right choice. Was I really better off alone? Would I regret this? Then I remembered Ryan's face when I walked out, the way he laughed, so sure that I'd fail. That was all the motivation I needed. I got to work. One picked up extra shifts. I cut back on unnecessary spending. Every dime I made went into savings because I had a bigger goal in mind. I wasn't just leaving them behind. I was going to prove that I never needed them in the first place. And then, something unexpected happened. At first, it was just a text from Lisa. "Hey, Ethan. Just checking in. Hope you're settling in okay." I left it on read. A few days later, another one. "Your dad and I are proud of you, you know. We just want you to be happy." Ignored. Then Ryan messaged me. "Hey, bro. How's the new place?" I laughed out loud when I saw that one. Like we were friends. Like he hadn't spent years treating me like garbage. I didn't reply. The messages kept coming. Some were casual. Some were guilt trips. And then, eventually, the real reason they were reaching out started to surface. Lisa called one evening. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity got the best of me. "Ethan," she started, her voice sugary sweet. "How have you been, honey?" "Fine," I said flatly. "We've just been thinking about you," she continued. "You know, things have been a little tough lately. Money's been tight." There it was. She danced around it for a while, talking about unexpected bills, how expensive Ryan's car payments were, how she and Dad were struggling. Then, finally, "We were wondering if you could help out a little, just until things even out." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. No, there was a pause. No, Mom, I'm not giving you money." Her voice wavered. "Ethan, we're family," I cut her off. "Were we family when you gave Ryan a car and handed me cleaning supplies? Were we family when you expected me to handle everything while he did nothing? Because back then, it sure didn't feel like it." She didn't know what to say to that. I waited for a response, but all I got was silence. Then, finally, she let out a shaky sigh. "I just thought you'd want to help." I laughed under my breath. "Yeah, I'm sure you did. Then I hung up. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly free. After that call with Lisa, I knew things weren't over. The silence lasted about a week. No texts, no calls, nothing. At first, I thought maybe they had finally gotten the message that I wasn't coming back, that I wasn't their safety net. But deep down, I knew better. They weren't giving up. Sure enough, it started again. First, it was Dad. He didn't text, he called, like that would somehow make me take things more seriously. I let it go to voicemail. When I finally played it back, his voice was tight, like he was trying to hold in his frustration. "Ethan, son, I know you're upset, but we need to talk. Your mother is worried. Call us back." I deleted it. 2 days later, another one. "I don't know what's gotten into you, but this behavior is unacceptable. You can't just cut your family off over nothing." Nothing. That word made my blood boil. The next message came from Ryan. "Dude, this is getting ridiculous. Just talk to them." I rolled my eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. Oh, now I was the one being ridiculous. Classic. Then came the kicker, a message from Lisa that finally spelled out what was happening. "Ethan, we really need to talk. Your dad and I are struggling financially, and we were hoping you could help. Ryan's car payments are a lot, and things are getting tight. Please call us." There it was. The real reason for all the sudden concern. They didn't miss me. They missed what I could do for them. I stared at the message for a long time before typing out a response. "I'm not your bank. You made your choices. Now deal with them." I hit send. That should have been the end of it. But of course, Ryan wasn't going to let it go. A few nights later, I was settling in after work, scrolling through my phone, when his name popped up on the screen. I ignored it. Then it rang again, and again. By the fourth call, I finally picked up, more out of irritation than anything else. "What?" I said, not even trying to hide my annoyance. "Ethan, man, you gotta help me." I blinked. "Excuse me?" Ryan sounded nothing like his usual cocky self. His voice was strained, almost panicked. "I'm serious. I'm screwed." I leaned back against the couch. "And that's my problem, because?" He exhaled sharply. "Look, I messed up, okay? I thought I could handle the car payments, but I can't. Mom and Dad are freaking out. They don't have the money to cover it anymore, and the bank is threatening to repossess it." I almost laughed. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You got handed a brand new car without working for it, and now you can't afford it. Shocking." "Ethan, come on," he whined. "I thought I'd have more time to figure things out, but everything's piling up. I need your help." I shook my head. "And what exactly do you expect me to do, Ryan?" He hesitated. I don't know. Lend me some money until I can get things under control." That was it. That was the moment I knew he hadn't learned a damn thing. I let out a slow breath, keeping my voice calm. "Ryan, let me ask you something. Did you ever once offer to help me when I was struggling? When I was working my ass off to keep everything together while you coasted?" Silence. "I didn't think so," I continued. "So why, exactly, should I bail you out now?" "Because we're brothers," he said weakly. That actually made me laugh. "Brothers? Ryan, we haven't been brothers in a long time. You just never noticed because you were too busy getting everything you wanted." He let out a frustrated groan. "So that's it? You're just gonna let me drown?" "No, Ryan," I said evenly. "I'm going to let you learn." And then I hung up. The next few weeks were blissfully quiet. No more calls, no more texts. Then one evening, I got home from work and found someone waiting for me outside my apartment. "Lisa." I sighed, already exhausted. "What are you doing here?" She looked me up and down, her expression unreadable. "Can we talk?" I hesitated. I knew I should just tell her to leave, but a small part of me was curious. What could she possibly say at this point? I stepped aside and let her in. She looked around the apartment like she was expecting something different. Maybe she thought I was living in some miserable hole in the wall, struggling without them. Instead, she saw a clean, well-kept space that I had built entirely on my own. "You've done well for yourself," she admitted. I crossed my arms. "Yeah, I have," she sighed, sitting down on the couch. "Look, Ethan, we made mistakes." I raised an eyebrow. "We?" She hesitated. "Okay, I made mistakes." That was new. She ran a hand through her hair, looking tired. "Your father and I, we didn't mean to push you away. We thought we were doing what was best. Ryan always needed more help, and you were always so independent. We didn't realize how much we were putting on you." I let out a dry laugh. You realized. You just didn't care. She flinched. That's not true. Really? Then why did it take me walking away for you to finally notice? She didn't have an answer for that. For a long time, we just sat there. The tension was heavy, years of resentment sitting between us. Finally, she said, I just wanted to see if there was still a chance to fix this. I studied her, searching for any sign that she actually meant it. Fix what, exactly? I asked. You don't need me. You need money. If I wasn't doing well, you wouldn't be here right now. Her face twisted with guilt. That's not fair. I shrugged. It's the truth. She exhaled, shaking her head. I don't know what else to say, Ethan. I stood up, signaling that this conversation was over. Then, don't say anything. She hesitated, then slowly got up and walked to the door. Before she left, she turned back one last time. Just think about it, okay? I didn't answer. As soon as she was gone, I locked the door and let out a breath. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel hurt. I just felt done. Because for the first time in my life, I finally realized something. I didn't need them. And that was the most freeing feeling in the world. After Lisa's unexpected visit, I half expected another round of calls or guilt-tripping texts. But for the first time since I left, there was silence. No messages, no missed calls, nothing. I should have felt relieved, and in a way, I was. But I also knew it wasn't over. People like my parents didn't just give up. They waited. And sure enough, it wasn't long before the other shoe dropped. A few weeks later, I was in the middle of a late shift at work when my phone buzzed. At first, I ignored it, but then it kept buzzing over and over. Something in my gut told me to check. It was a text from Ryan. Bro, you need to call Mom. It's serious. I frowned. He hadn't contacted me since our last conversation. I had assumed he was too busy drowning in his own mess to bother. Curiosity got the best of me. I stepped outside and dialed Lisa's number. She picked up on the first ring. Ethan. Her voice was shaky, like she'd been crying. I hesitated. What's going on? It's your father, she said, her voice cracking. He collapsed at work. A cold weight settled in my chest. What? They think it was a heart attack, she whispered. He's in the hospital. For a moment, I couldn't speak. No matter how much resentment I held toward him, this wasn't something I had expected. Which hospital? I finally asked. She told me. I hung up without another word. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and bad coffee. It was the kind of place that made everything feel fragile, like the wrong move could break something. When I walked into the waiting room, Lisa was already there. She looked tired more than I'd ever seen her. Ryan sat next to her, staring at the floor, looking uncharacteristically quiet. Lisa's eyes widened when she saw me. Ethan. I didn't know what to say. How is he? I asked instead. She swallowed hard. Stable. The doctor said it wasn't a full-blown heart attack, but it was close. They're running more tests. I nodded, absorbing the information. I wasn't sure how I was supposed to feel. This was my father, someone who had spent years treating me like an afterthought. And yet, standing here, knowing how close he'd come to dying, it was impossible to ignore the weight of it. Ryan finally looked up. He asked for you. That surprised me. Me? Lisa nodded. He's awake. Just go talk to him. I hesitated, then turned toward the hallway. My feet felt heavy as I walked. When I stepped into the room, Dad looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. The man who had always seemed so sure of himself now lay in a hospital bed, wires attached to his arms, looking fragile. For the first time in my life, I saw him as human. His eyes flickered open when he heard me. Ethan. I swallowed. Hey, Dad. He let out a slow breath. Didn't think you'd come. Yeah, well, I muttered. Neither did I. A small, tired smile crossed his face. Guess we both got surprises tonight. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. For a moment, there was only silence. Then he sighed, shifting slightly. I've been thinking a lot, lying here, about you, about everything. I didn't say anything. He rubbed his face. I know I wasn't the best father to you. That was the understatement of the century. I was hard on you because I thought it would make you stronger, he continued. I told myself it was for your own good, that you didn't need the same support as Ryan because you were different, more responsible. I clenched my jaw. That's not an excuse. I know, he exhaled. I was wrong. I blinked. That was the last thing I had expected to hear. Dad looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something real in his expression. Not authority, not disappointment. Just a man who had finally realized he had messed up. I should have been better to you, he admitted. And I should have made Ryan stand on his own 2 feet instead of carrying him. I crossed my arms, unsure if I believed him. Why are you telling me this now? Because almost dying puts things into perspective. He let out a weak chuckle, and because I don't know if I'll get another chance to say it, I stared at him. This was the moment, wasn't it? The moment where I was supposed to forgive him, to say, "It's okay, Dad. I understand." But I didn't, because it wasn't okay, and I didn't understand. Instead, I sighed. "Get some rest, Dad." I turned to leave. He didn't stop me. I walked out of the hospital feeling like my brain was running a marathon. Lisa and Ryan were still in the waiting room when I passed by. Lisa looked hopeful, like she expected me to come over and say something reassuring. Ryan looked like he wanted to be anywhere but here. I stopped just long enough to say, "Let me know when he's discharged." Then I walked out. I spent the next few days trying to push it all out of my mind. I buried myself in work, went to the gym, did anything to keep myself from overthinking. Then, a week later, the next bomb dropped. Ryan showed up at my apartment. I opened the door, already exhausted. "What do you want?" He looked nervous. "Can we talk?" I sighed, stepping aside. "Fine. Make it quick." He walked in, rubbing the back of his neck. "So, Dad's home now." "I know," I said. Lisa had sent me a text earlier. I hadn't responded. Ryan hesitated. "Things are different. He's not the same. He doesn't yell as much. He doesn't act like he used to." I shrugged. "Near-death experiences do that to people." Ryan exhaled sharply. "Yeah, well, Mom's stressed. And money's still tight. She wants you to come back. To help." There it was. I let out a bitter laugh. "Of course she does." Ryan's face twisted. "Come on, Ethan. You know she's struggling. Dad can't work right now, and the bills are stacking up. I can't." He stopped himself. "I can't handle all this alone." I tilted my head. "You mean the way I handled everything alone for years?" He clenched his jaw. "That's not fair." I let out a sharp breath. "No, Ryan. What's not fair is that you spent your whole life coasting, while I carried the weight of this family. And now that I'm gone, you're finally feeling the pressure." He didn't answer. I shook my head. "I'm not coming back, Ryan. Figure it out." His eyes flashed with something between anger and desperation. "So that's it? You're just gonna abandon us?" I leveled him with a stare. "No, I already did." For the first time, Ryan didn't have a comeback. I opened the door. "Good luck." He walked out without another word. And just like that, the last bridge between us burned. After Ryan left, I expected to feel something. Satisfaction, maybe. Relief. But mostly, I just felt tired. I hadn't spoken to my family in weeks, and yet, somehow, they were still taking up space in my head. The hospital, the money problems, my dad's sudden realization that he had been a terrible father. None of it had changed the past. None of it erased the years of being ignored and undervalued. And yet, a part of me still felt like I was waiting for the next punch to land, because that's how it had always been. I was just about to head to bed when my phone buzzed. Another text. But this time, it wasn't from Ryan. It was from Lisa. "I know you're upset, but please, Ethan, can we talk?" I stared at the screen for a long moment before finally typing back. "About what?" Her response came almost instantly. "About everything. Please, just one conversation." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I should have ignored it. I knew that, but against my better judgment, I typed out a single word. "Fine." We met at a small diner not far from my apartment. It was neutral ground, a place that didn't hold any memories. Lisa was already there when I arrived, stirring a cup of coffee like it held the answers to life's problems. When she saw me, she gave me a small, cautious smile. "Ethan." I slid into the booth across from her. "All right, I'm here. Talk." She exhaled slowly, setting down her spoon. "I don't know where to start." I leaned back. "How about with the truth?" She flinched slightly but nodded. "Okay." For a long moment, she didn't speak. She just stared at the table, as if organizing her thoughts. Finally, she sighed. "Your father isn't the same since the hospital. He's quieter, less sure of himself. I think he realized how much he took for granted." I didn't respond. She continued. "We both did." That caught me off guard. Lisa looked up at me, her expression unreadable. "Ethan, we failed you. I see that now. You were always the one we could count on, so we leaned on you too much. And in the process, we neglected you." I studied her face, looking for any sign that this was just another manipulation. But for once, I didn't see an angle, just regret. She sighed, rubbing her forehead. Ryan isn't handling things well. He's never had to struggle before, and now he's overwhelmed. He keeps asking why we can't just fix things. I let out a humorless laugh. Sounds familiar. She gave me a sad smile. Yeah. Silence stretched between us before she finally said, I'm not asking you for money, Ethan. That surprised me. She shook her head. I mean it. We dug this hole. We have to find our own way out. I wasn't sure if I believed her, but I didn't interrupt. She took a deep breath. I don't want to lose you completely. I know we can't undo the past, but I want to try to make things right. If you'll let me. I stared at her, my mind a storm of emotions. Part of me wanted to tell her it was too late, that no amount of regret could change what had already been done. But another part of me, the part that had spent years craving even a shred of acknowledgement, felt something shift. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe it was the start of something new. I picked up my coffee and took a slow sip before finally meeting her gaze. I don't know if I can ever trust you the way I used to, I admitted. Lisa nodded, her eyes glassy. I understand. I sighed. But if you're really serious about fixing things, then I guess we can start here. Her breath hitched slightly, but she nodded again. And just like that, for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, this story wasn't over yet. Leaving that diner, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel closure. I just felt tired. Lisa's words had been honest at least. They felt that way, but honesty didn't erase years of damage. A single conversation wasn't going to undo what they had done, and I wasn't about to pretend otherwise. Still, something about the way she had looked at me, the way she had admitted their mistakes, stuck with me. Not enough to make me forget, but maybe enough to make me listen. A week passed, then two. No texts, no calls. For the first time since I left, my family wasn't chasing me down, trying to guilt-trip me into fixing their problems. And then one evening, as I was finishing up dinner, my phone buzzed. Not Lisa, not Ryan, Dad. I hesitated before answering. Ethan, he said, his voice weaker than I remembered. I didn't know what to say. Hey. He let out a slow breath. I heard you met with your mother. Yeah. A pause. She told me what you said, that you don't know if you can trust us again. I stayed silent, waiting. I just wanted to say, you're right. I blinked. That was unexpected. He exhaled heavily. I spent years convincing myself that I was doing the right thing, that I was making you stronger by being harder on you. But really, I was just failing you. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling a strange mix of emotions. I don't expect you to forgive me, he continued. I just want you to know that I see it now. And I'm sorry. It was so simple. No excuses, no justifications. Just an apology. I didn't know what to do with that. I don't know if things can ever go back to how they were, I admitted. I don't either, he said. But if you ever decide you want to try, I'd like that. For the first time in my life, my father wasn't telling me what to do. He was leaving the choice up to me. And maybe that was the first step towards something real. I didn't move back. I didn't start calling them every day. But little by little, things changed. Lisa stopped asking for help and started just checking in. Not because she needed something, just because she wanted to. Dad never pushed. He gave me space, and in return, I found myself reaching out on my own terms. Ryan? He struggled. But for the first time in his life, he had to figure things out without me picking up the slack. And maybe that was the best thing that could have happened to him. I wasn't their fallback anymore. I was just Ethan. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. Looking back, I don't regret leaving. I don't regret saying no. But I do think people can change if they want to, if they're willing to put in the work. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my family. Maybe we'll find something new. Maybe we won't. But either way, I know one thing for sure. I'm finally free. Story 2. Callum is my name. Family members may be the worst thieves. If that's one thing I've discovered the hard way. I used to believe that betrayal was a dramatic and fantastical event that only occurred in movies. However, it also occurs in real life, by the very individuals you should trust, sometimes. And in my instance, it was Liam, my elder brother. According to our parents, Liam has always been the ideal child, incapable of doing anything wrong. He stole things if he wanted them. If he made a mistake, it was someone else's fault. I grew accustomed to him taking things from me and never returning them. Clothes, video games, and cash from my wallet. And I was being self-centered when I grumbled. Callum is your older brother, he watches out for you. My mother would argue that seizing my belongings was a kind gesture. Dad wasn't much more favorable. I was the scapegoat whenever Liam made a mistake. I was supposed to aid Liam if he needed it. That was simply the situation. I should have anticipated that he would do something worse. I ought to have exercised more caution. You see, I have been saving for my own home for the last 5 years. All of the extra money was invested in the fund. I took on more work, forewent holidays, and led a thrifty lifestyle. It was more than simply property ownership. It has to do with freedom, autonomy. Don't get involved in Liam's problems anymore. No more having our parents guilt trip us. I tasted my escape coming so close. My stomach fell as I checked my account one morning. The funds had vanished. Everything. I initially believed it to be an error. I saw that when I reloaded the website and looked at my transaction history. A sizable withdrawal was made to an unfamiliar account. Confusion replaced panic. Then, like a gradual, nauseating kick to the stomach, reality hit me while I was clicking through my settings. Liam. He was aware of my money, but more significantly, he was aware of the joint account I had foolishly kept open for years when our parents urged that we have an emergency fund. Liam must have noticed, because he still had access to it even though I hardly ever touched it. I gave him a call right away. No response. I didn't text anything. I had trembling hands. With my pulse racing, I drove directly to his house. I could already see that smug, self-satisfied look as he opened the door. "Oh, Callum, I wanted to know when you would arrive." Leaning comfortably against the doorframe, he spoke. "How on earth did you accomplish that?" I didn't care if my voice sounded harsher than I had intended. Liam gave a shrug. "Calm down. I simply borrowed it. Taken out? I was having trouble breathing. My house fund was that. Where's it, Liam?" And then, like the complete jerk that he was, he smiled and took out his phone. After a few swipes, I found myself looking at a photo. Under the showroom lights, a sleek, brand new sports automobile shines. My heart fell. He laughed. "You don't need a house yet. I promise you. Just have patience." Suddenly, something inside of me exploded. However, I chose to remain silent rather than shrieking or lunging at him like I so much wanted to. I knew that if I stayed, I would do something that I couldn't take back. So I turned around and left. Liam, age 41. He assumed I would simply turn over as usual. However, I wasn't going to overlook it this time. I was determined to make him regret everything this time. For the days ahead, I was dazed. I always saw that smug expression on Liam's face when I closed my eyes. That fucking photo of his new vehicle. My funds. In a moment, years of saving, hard work, and sacrifice were all erased because my brother felt he had a right to it. What's the worst? My folks. I foolishly phoned them in the hopes that they would finally see Liam for who he truly was, that they would at last agree with me. I ought to have been more aware. Mom sighed, as if I were exaggerating. "Callum, it's only financial. Savings may always be resumed." "Mom, money wasn't the only factor. I had it everything," she responded. "You're young," as though it somehow improved the situation. "You still have time to purchase a home. Your sibling. Lately, he has been having difficulties. You are aware." He was desperate for a victory. When he snatched my phone, I almost dropped it. "He spent my money on a vehicle after stealing it." There was a lengthy silence. "He stated he will reimburse you." I laughed resentfully. "And you think that's true?" When Dad finally spoke, his tone was one of exhaustion. "We're a family, Callum. Families support one another. Perhaps you should learn to be less materialistic from this." That was it. I became aware that I was the only one experiencing this. My parents refused to assist. Liam was not going to develop a conscience by magic. If I desired a refund, I had to act on my own initiative. So I did. Liam never anticipated this. I fell silent. I stopped making calls, sending texts, and attending family gatherings. My mother inquired as to why I wasn't coming over. I just stated that I was busy. I was aware that she would tell Liam about it, and I was aware that he would think I was pouting and sulking, and that I would simply go on as usual. He was unaware that I was plotting my retaliation. Over the course of the following week, I dug and discovered a lot. Liam wasn't simply irresponsible. He acted carelessly. That new sports vehicle. He didn't just purchase it. It was financed in his name. And Liam had bad credit because he was Liam. The monthly payments would have been quite hefty. He could hardly afford the payments. Next was his employment, or more accurately, the absence of work stability. Liam was a salesperson. Feast or famine was the theme of this commission-based engagement. His rent was already past due. I happened to drop by unexpectedly one day and saw crumpled up eviction papers in his garbage. He was despised by his landlord, and it seemed like he was barely surviving. The last nail in the coffin, too. Scam involving insurance. Liam received a reduced price since he informed the salesman that he would only be using the vehicle for personal purposes. However, I was certain that he was using it for side jobs, sometimes for ride-sharing and other times as a private driver to make quick money. His insurance company would take a harsh stance against him if he received even one anonymous tip. I had every component. All I had to do now was get them moving. I began modestly. I started by ensuring that his landlord received a brief notice regarding those past due payments, a gentle reminder in case they had forgotten. Then, pretending to be a concerned citizen who had just occurred to see his automobile being utilized for business, I called his insurance company. They promised to investigate. Finally, I held off on approaching Liam until he was at work. The salesperson who sold me the automobile was cool and composed when I entered the showroom. Was there a dapper man in a suit? I tried my hardest to be a courteous but irritated customer. Hello, I'm looking for information on an automobile that my brother recently bought. There has been a little situation, I mentioned. The man instantly became alert. Of course, it's all professional charm. What appears to be the problem? I sighed, pretending to be frustrated. I discovered that he actually financed it under his name, even though he claimed to have paid for it in full. The issue is that he applied using some of my financial data. I'm concerned. Let's say that some creative paperwork has been involved. The salesperson's face wavered slightly. Now I just needed that. Having to escalate this legally would be awful. But I just need to make sure that my name doesn't appear anywhere on that paperwork, I said, lowering my voice. If it does, I would be forced to report it as fraudulent. You understand, I'm sure. I was there when the man began to panic. Allow me to quickly check the system. He went through Liam's file as I waited. I was aware that my name was missing. I knew better, but Liam hadn't been stupid enough to put me down outright. Fraud cases are hated by auto dealerships. A transaction can be flipped at the first hint of it. The salesman's throat was cleared. Oh, well, I can tell you that everything was handled in compliance with the rules, sir. However, I would advise getting in touch with the finance department immediately if there is any suspicion of fraudulent conduct. Bingo. I only needed to hear that. I thanked him, nodded, and went right outside to my car to write a formal-sounding email to the financing department of the dealership, CAG's fraud division. I only used enough ambiguity to cause concern. I received a response in less than an hour. We appreciate you alerting us about this. We will be looking into this right away since we take fraudulent applications extremely seriously. I grinned. Now the wheels began turning. Liam was unaware of what was about to happen. What's the best part? I was far from finished yet. Liam gave me a call 2 days later. I let it to ring. Then, again and again. Unless he needed something, he never phoned me this frequently. At last, I responded in a relaxed tone. Liam, hello. What is going on? He spoke in a tight, tense voice. Have you taken any action? Despite the fact that he couldn't see me, I raised an eyebrow. What is it about? Don't act foolish, Callum, he yelled. Just now, the dealership phoned. They claimed that there was a problem with my finance, and they are currently discussing the possibility of reevaluating my loan. And, you know what? My policy is being reviewed, according to an email I received from my insurance company. It nearly made me chuckle. I didn't anticipate that speed. I remarked, wow, that sounds serious, but I'm not sure how that relates to me. A liar, Liam essentially yelled. After a week of silence, everything is suddenly going wrong. Liam, I am certain that you were involved in this. I was stolen from by you, my voice said. Steady. You took the money I saved for years, and you rubbed it in my face rather than offering an apology. You drove about in a car you couldn't afford, and you encouraged me to be patient. And now that calm is finally catching up with you, you're angry. He sneered. Oh, don't give me that self-righteous crap. All you're doing is acting like a resentful little brat. now undo anything you did. I exhaled slowly while feigning gratitude. I don't believe I will. Callum. Goodbye, Liam. I ended the call. Things worsened for him the next day. I received another call, so I knew. From my mom this time. What did you do, Callum? The moment I took it up, she demanded. Mom, hello to you as well. Dryly, I said. Avoid being sarcastic. Your sibling is having problems. His landlord is pursuing him for unpaid rent, and the dealership is threatening to take back his automobile. He claimed that whatever you did damaged his credit. I let out a sigh. Mom, I didn't destroy his credit. Liam's carelessness with money caused him to damage his credit on his own. And perhaps he wouldn't be in this situation if you kept him accountable for once in his life. His brother is you. You should support him, not undermine him. I gave a sour laugh. Oh, so I'm expected to overlook it when he embezzles thousands of dollars from me? However, I become the antagonist when I do something that forces him to deal with the fallout from his deeds. You don't get it, she sighed. I'm not under as much stress as he is at the moment. I fired back. Is Liam's sports vehicle more essential than my future, or do you not even care that I lost all of my housing money? A pause occurred. Please, Callum, just fix this. No. I ended the call. I knew Liam now. I was aware that he would not tolerate this. Indeed, he attempted to strike back. I received a text message from an unidentified number that evening. Watch your back. You think you're smart. Very mature. I wasn't concerned, though. Liam didn't bite. He was all bark. He had never been capable of managing things alone. There was always someone with him. His messes are often cleaned up by my parents, but no one was there to help him now. I made the decision to review my artwork the next morning. Playing the worried victim of possible fraud once more, I called the dealership's finance office. Although courteous, the woman on the other end was forceful. She informed me that we had found several discrepancies in the application. The loan is now being reevaluated, and if payments cannot be confirmed, the car may be repossessed until more research is conducted. Taken back. Liam, therefore, had a limited amount of time before they seized his priceless vehicle. That wasn't all, though. He had lied about how he was using the automobile. Therefore, my small tip to his insurance company had worked. His insurance was being reviewed, and based on what I understood, there was a good probability that they would either completely cancel it or raise his premiums to the point where he couldn't pay them. Then there was his landlord, of course. I had ensured that they had all of the records pertaining to his late payments. There would have been another eviction if we had missed. Liam was on the verge of losing everything. There was still one more item to accomplish, so I wasn't finished yet. Something that would guarantee that he had nowhere to go. I inhaled deeply, opened my email, and wrote one last message. The moment has come to seal his doom. I didn't hear from Liam for a few days. No texts, no calls. My parents became abnormally silent as well. One thing was implied by that. He was frantically attempting to clean up the mess he had created. However, I had additional knowledge. Liam was not one to concede defeat readily. Either he was plotting or he was hoping our parents would intervene and make things right for him. Then one night, as I was about to go to bed, I heard a loud, quick tap on my door. Not just any knock. It's more like someone attempting to dissect it. I recognized the person already, sighing. I approached and opened the door. He was standing there. Liam appears utterly enraged. His fine jacket was slightly crumpled. His generally well-groomed hair was unkempt, and his face was a mixture of fright and anger. His eyes were almost protruding from his head. My life was wrecked by you. Before I could stop him, he blasted and pushed his way inside. I breathed out slowly. He shut the door after himself. Greetings to you as well, Liam. Callum, don't start with me, he hissed. You are well aware of what you did. I pressed myself up against the wall, crossed arms. Do you mean ensuring that you take responsibility for your own actions? Yes, I am aware of what I did, and you were deserving of all of it. He paced like a caged animal and said, They're taking my car. My financing was being reviewed. The dealership informed me over the phone today. And you know what? As it happens, lying on an application is a serious offense. Who could have known? He chuckled bitterly and spun around on me. In addition, my insurance was discontinued. As simple as that. They accused me of fraud or something. Additionally, my landlord is threatening to remove me because it seems that they dislike tenants who consistently miss payments. Who provided them that information, I wonder? I didn't respond. He was well aware of your lack of rights. his voice trembling with rage. He kept taking steps closer. "You are unrelated to any of this," I sneered. "Oh, really? Because you took thousands of dollars from me. As far as I can tell, Liam, that money was meant for my house, my future, and you ignored it as if it didn't exist. Just so you could drive a fancy automobile and show off. What's the worst? You laughed in my face and didn't even apologize. I was going to reimburse you. When I shot back, he snapped. Give specifics." He parted his lips, then closed them. The truth was known to both of us. He would never reimburse me, not until he had to do it. His hands clenched into fists at his sides as he let out a harsh sigh. "All right, your small retaliation was exacted. You got your message across. Fix it now." My look was inscrutable as I gazed at him. What should be fixed? Give the dealership a call. Inform them that it was an error. No, give the insurance provider a call. Let's say you told lies. No. Give my landlord a call. And no. His nose wrinkled. "I swear, Callum." "What do you swear?" I interrupted him. My voice was dangerously quiet. "Liam, what are you going to do? Again, steal from me? Everything I've worked for is already yours. And you expect me to tidy up your mess now that things aren't going your way? Not taking place." Liam flung himself onto my couch and made an angry grunt. It was also stressful for him to rub his temples in this way. "This is unbelievable," he whispered. "I was meant to be ready. Everything was flawless. And now, I have nothing now. What's insane, do you?" My voice was weirdly light as I spoke. "Everything may still have been yours. You might have just requested a loan from me. We might have been able to come to an agreement. But you choose to be avaricious instead. You're broke now, too." He didn't answer. We were silent for a long while. Finally, he let out a breath through his nose and sat up. His countenance changed to one of calculation as he looked at me. "All right," he responded slowly. "What is the amount?" I blinked. "What? What is your desired amount? Undo all of this," he said in an aggressively informal tone. "Decide on a price." I chuckled. In fact, I laughed. "Do you really believe that you can purchase your way out of this situation?" "Everything has a cost," he retorted. I gave a head shake. "Not now." He tightened his jaw. He was aware that he was losing control of the situation. Then, almost simultaneously, my phone exploded. I gave it a quick look. My bank sent me an email, the heading: "We have received the incoming wire transfer." It was there when I clicked to open it. The entire sum of my pilfered funds. All of my money is back in my account. After giving it a lengthy look, I turned the screen in his direction. "What is this?" Liam avoided looking at me. He muttered, "I had to borrow it. Obtained a loan. Now just reverse everything." I put my phone back in my pocket and grinned. "No." He jerked his head up. "What?" "I received my money back. However, that does not imply that I am absolving you. Liam, you will still lose everything. And perhaps, just possibly, you will finally comprehend what it feels like to reach your lowest point." Red with anger, Liam sprung off the sofa. "You're a little cocky." I extended a hand. "Get out, Liam. This is where we're done." His fists twitched as if he wanted to hit something as he stood there, panting. He knew there was nothing he could do this time, so he didn't. At last, he pivoted and raced out, slamming the door so forcefully that the walls trembled. With a leisurely exhale, I collapsed on my couch. I received my money back. For the first time in a long time, I felt at ease, knowing that Liam was about to lose everything. However, as I had anticipated, Liam wasn't finished, so that tranquility didn't last long. Little things were involved at start. He would call from various numbers and leave irate voicemails complaining that I had destroyed his life and that I didn't comprehend my own actions. Every time I blocked him. After that, my parents began phoning and wanting to know why Liam was in such disarray. "Callum, you went too far." My mother gave me a phone reprimand. "He is your sibling. You ought to support him rather than undermine him, helping him the way he helped himself to my funds." I chuckled sourly. "That was not the same." She sighed. "He simply did. He was wrong. You didn't need to go ruin his life because of that." I squeezed my nasal bridge. "I didn't ruin his life, Mom. You did. He couldn't get away with it. That's all I did. I think you should fix it, as does your father, if family was truly important to you. You spoke with the dealership and the bank. Take action to assist him." I gave a head shake. "No, I have done more than enough already. Liam is capable of fixing his own life if he so chooses. she stammered, but before she could further guilt trip me, I hung up. They would never understand me. At last, I had come to terms with that. However, Liam wasn't finished yet. I heard a big bang outside my flat a few nights later. As I hurried to my window, my stomach fell, and sure enough, Liam was there by my car. Before he could make another swing, his entire body was tensed with anger, and he was holding a baseball bat. I picked up my phone and dialed the police. By the time they got there, he had severely dented the driver's door and broken both of my side mirrors. The true kicker, though, he went on a lengthy tirade about how I destroyed his life and that this was retaliation when the cops questioned him about why he did it. That response didn't sit well with them. Liam was taken into custody on charges of property damage and vandalism. The repairs were paid for by my insurance, and I was not held financially responsible due to the police report. But on top of everything else, Liam, you now had to pay legal expenses. And no one was there to save him this time. I refused to dismiss the accusations despite my parents' entreaties. Liam had to understand that his actions had repercussions, and he appeared more dejected than I had ever seen him when the court date eventually arrived. His pricey clothing had been replaced with something far more humble, and the haughtiness was gone. I only stated, I just want my brother to finally take responsibility for his actions, in response to the judge's request for my thoughts. That was my final encounter with Liam. I was told that in order to pay for his legal fees, he had to sell what little he had left. His opulent lifestyle and the automobile were gone. After aiding him, he returned to live with my parents, who were now also having financial difficulties. He made an effort to get employment, although it was difficult given his past. The call ultimately ended. He must have recognized at last that I couldn't help him. For my part, I refunded my funds and, a few months later, purchased the first house I had been seeing before Liam robbed me. And let me tell you, I knew I deserved it, and that no one could take it away from me as I walked through that front door. It was more satisfying than any retaliation could possibly be. What do you think then? Was I too severe? Had I been able to forgive him? Or did he finally receive what was rightfully his? Tell me. Story 3. Alex is my name. It would be an understatement to say that my family has been complicated. There has always been an unsaid tension between us that everyone senses but rarely discusses. You'll understand if you've ever been a member of a family where everything appears normal on the surface, but, something's wrong. We're not impoverished, but we're also not wealthy. My parents fared well for themselves, so I suppose I followed in their footsteps and found a good career that allowed me to live paycheck to paycheck while still saving a little money here and there. My cousin Danny, however, is another matter entirely. Although we grew up together, we have never had a good relationship. This feeling of entitlement has always been a part of him, as if he had a debt to the world. It wasn't as evident when we were little. However, it became increasingly apparent as we grew older. He has always been, let's say, less than cordial, especially when it comes to me. He occasionally stares at me as if he finds it unbearable that I'm doing okay. He was complaining to me a few years back about how hard it was for him to drive the brand new automobile his parents had purchased for him. He became defensive when I pointed out that I was doing very well, without anything being provided to me. In the present, I'm attempting to maintain my composure while attending a family meal. Like other gatherings, this one is a pretext for my relatives to act as though nothing is wrong. My aunt's place, a small suburban house with a white picket fence, is where we gather. But on the inside, everything is strained. As usual, my aunt, uncle, and cousins are present. Awkward grins and strained chat permeate the atmosphere. Naturally, my cousin Danny is in the midst of it all, chatting loudly enough for everyone to hear him, but never really saying anything that is worth hearing. Whether he's reciting the same joke for the 100th time, or boasting about a new device he purchased, he's always the loudest person in the room. As usual, I try to get through the night while sitting there and nodding. Nobody discusses the important things. Nobody points out that Danny believes he has a right to everything simply because we are related. While everyone else acts as like nothing is wrong, here I am, the black sheep attempting to avoid conflict. Then, the topic of discussion changes. I was asked how work was doing by my aunt. It functions perfectly, therefore I don't mind. She nods as if it were the most intriguing thing anybody could have said when I tell her it's steady. She's attempting to strike up a conversation, but it's obvious that nobody is interested in the specifics. At that point, Danny begins. I can tell right away that something is about to happen when he gives me that smug smile. He taps his fork against his plate and adds, "So Alex, how is the work going? Now earning an excellent living. You seem to be the kind of person that always takes care of themselves. I know better, yet he says it as if he's actually interested. He's assessing me and attempting to determine my earnings. I don't respond immediately. He's fishing, I know that. Oh, you are aware." I respond nonchalantly. The same old thing. Working. A little bit of savings here and there. Not too wild. I leave it open-ended. His dissatisfaction with it is evident from my careful observation of him. His voice drops just enough so that only those closest to him can hear him as he leans in. He grins and adds, "Yeah, well, you got that nice little chunk of change now. Must be nice." I hear the edge in his voice, but I'm not sure whether he thinks I won't notice. The unsaid obstacle I've been considering is purchasing a new vehicle. His eyes sparkle as he goes on. However, given the current situation, I'm a little low on funds. Aren't you aware of the situation? He waits for me to bite by letting that dangle in midair. I refuse to fall for the trick. I choose to ignore his less than subtle remarks and simply take a leisurely sip of my drink. He acts as though I'm too stupid to notice what he's doing. He's either attempting to get a compliment or to make me feel bad about outperforming him. "Yes, exactly," I inquire. I'm speaking lightly. "You'll figure it out, though. I'm positive." He then applies pressure. "Come on, we are related, correct?" Even though his voice is loud enough for everyone at the table to hear, Danny leans in even more and lowers it to a near whisper. "Family members support one another, Perhaps you might find me some money," I thought. The bare minimum to secure that vehicle. After all, I realize it's not a big ask. "You're doing fairly well now." He stops and looks at me as if I should be appreciative of his request. My thoughts begin to race. He has requested money before, and this is most likely not the first time. However, it feels different this time. He's not only requesting assistance, he's attempting to influence me into believing that I owe him money. My heart begins to race, but I maintain my composure. "Man, I have no idea," I say in a calm voice. "Right now, I'm not really in a position to be giving away cash." His eyes twitch with irritation, but he immediately covers it with a fake smile. "Alex, hurry up. Only family is lending a hand." "Family, huh?" He's attempting to appear casual with his silky voice now, but I can tell. No one is speaking, but everyone at the table is looking. I sense the pressure increasing. I'm going to lose it. Then I recall something, though. There's been something bothering me for months, something that will cause his entire performance to fall apart. Slowly, my phone is in my pocket and I take it out. I scroll through a discussion while tapping a few times. Danny is watching me, not sure what I'm doing, and the tension around the table is nearly too much to stomach. I give him a glance. A tiny smile is starting to appear on my face. I respond, my voice extremely sharp. "You want to talk about family helping each other out?" The notice appears when I swipe the screen. Then describe this. There is a complete silence in the room. Everybody at the table is staring at me with blazing eyes. However, I keep my eyes fixed on Danny's face. I lift my phone just high enough for him to view it, keeping my finger on the screen. I see his eyes go from my face to the phone as his smirk wavers. His face gradually transformed from arrogant assurance to incredulity. His lips quiver for a time as if he's trying to think of anything to say, but the words don't come. That's when I reveal the truth. I open the screen grab. It's a text message from a few months ago that I had all but forgotten about until lately. The sender was obviously annoyed with Danny's actions. It reads, "Danny has once again been disparaging you. You're simply a broke loser who's fortunate to have a job," I told everyone. There's another statement behind that, a little more snipping. "You're not even worth asking for help," he says. Well, I suppose I won't speak to you unless he is in need. As I observe, Danny's face turns from pale to utterly colorless. There's nothing I need to say. It's all in the text. Despite his best efforts to remain composed, my cousin's stuttering shows that he is unsure of what to do. His voice is weak as he clears his throat. "Alex, it's not." When he determines that nothing he says will resolve this, he stops talking. Apart from the faint clink of silverware on plates and the soft hum of the air conditioner, the room is still calm. I can see the hesitancy in everyone's eyes as they gaze between us, so yet no one has spoken. My aunt, who often mediates conflicts in the family, looks at Danny and then at me, her expression taut with perplexity. She clearly doesn't understand what's happening, and I can see her mentally attempting to piece things together. Still attempting to seem good, Danny lets forth a feeble laugh. You see, it's not what it appears to be. That is, he doesn't, however, finish. As he glances at the phone screen once more, his voice falters, as if he's just now beginning to realize how seriously he's been caught. His eyes dart around the table as he moves uneasily in his chair. I'm not going to let him get away with it, even though his face is one of humiliation and anger. I remark, "That's funny," without trying to disguise my cynicism. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but I had no idea that family members whispered behind one another's backs like way. As I watched Danny struggle under the weight of his own falsehoods, I allowed the quiet to linger for a few more seconds. I don't even need to glance at other people. They're all thinking the same thing, I know that. The worst thing? I'm beginning to put things together on my end. She glances at it, then at us. Danny, her expression gradually shifting from bewilderment to worry. Danny, what? What is this? Softly, she asks. What's happening? I don't respond on his behalf. I simply waited for the reality to sink in and let the stillness linger. Danny opens his mouth once again, but nothing comes out. Everyone at the table is beginning to see him for who he truly is, and he is running out of excuses. He's beginning to lose the arrogant, conceited mindset he's had for years. Additionally, I'm not on the hot seat for the first time. However, my uncle interrupts me just when I believe I have the advantage. Okay, let's just stop worrying. Isn't everyone a little tense? I can see it in his eyes as he tries to diffuse the situation. He doesn't think Danny is genuine. No more. Something stands in the way. He looks at me now as if he's trying to determine whether this is a family issue or something more serious. Seeing the change, Danny turns to my uncle for support. This is absurd, Dad, he murmurs. Alex is only attempting to harm my reputation in front of everyone. All I was requesting was assistance, just like any other family. This is completely exaggerated. He is now frantically attempting to control the situation. However, it's too late. The fissures are beginning to appear. I put my phone face down on the table and get to my feet. This chat is over. I respond icily. I'm not trying to make you look bad, Danny. That's what you're doing alone. I looked at my uncle and aunt. I spoke steadily. Are you curious about the type of family that supports one another? A family that doesn't discuss private matters. A family that, in times of need, does not take advantage of one another. I assumed we were that type of family. Now that his face is flushed, Danny probably regrets ever attempting this trick. His eyes show it to me. That moment when he understood that I would not give up. When he understood that he would not get away with it this time. Just before the tension peaks, he moves uncomfortably in his chair, unwilling to look anybody in the eye. I take action. Do you really desire money? I exclaim, breaking the stillness with my voice. Then, describe this. I grab my phone once again, prepared to reveal him what I've been hiding, but I'm not doing so. Another screenshot, please. I'm pulling up something different this time, something that will be the last straw for him. Glaring in the faint dining room light, I move my phone across the table with the screen facing up. I can feel the strain increasing with each second, and the weight of the situation is evident. Everyone is holding their breath, anticipating what will happen next. Even Danny seemed to have seen a ghost. Without a word, I let the phone sit on the table. The text message is clearly visible on the screen. A week ago, Danny sent a message to one of his buddies. Is it really true that Alex believes he is superior to me? This guy pretends to be a big shot after receiving a small amount of money. I wouldn't offer him any assistance, much less trust him. I will continue to play the victim. Your family will always be there for you. Like a slap, the words linger in the air. The silence is oppressive as everyone looks at it. Even my uncle, who often serves as the peacekeeper, reclines in his chair with wide eyes. I'm unsure of how to interpret this. My aunt's expression is a mixture of astonishment and incredulity. She grabs for her wine glass, her fingers quivering slightly. Danny's hands shake and his face goes ghostly white as he reaches for the phone, but I remove it in time. Danny, do you want to continue acting like the victim? I ask in a calm voice. Now, though, there's a chill that permeates the space. Do you wish to continue using the family card? Or should we discuss how, when you need anything, You attempt to suck up to everyone else and have been disparaging me behind my back, calling me a loser in front of your friends." His face is drained of blood. His mouth opens, but nothing comes out. Something I haven't seen in years has taken the place of his typical arrogance and his entire demeanor, vulnerability. And by the way his eyes flit around the table, I can tell that he is aware that he has lost this time, with the exception of my aunt's glass clinking softly as she puts it back down with a wobbly hand. The room is now completely quiet. After glancing at Danny, my uncle turns back to face me. The typical cool authority is nowhere to be seen. His expression is just one of weariness, as if he has finally come to the conclusion that his kid has been the one creating the problem all along. Danny tries to regain some respect by clearing his throat. "Here it is," he says. "This is all a misunderstanding," in a hushed tone. I can hear the despair in it now, though, his defense's weaknesses. "No, Danny," I respond firmly, meeting his gaze. "There is no miscommunication here. You're attempting to control everyone around you. You've been putting on a poor me act for so long that everyone believes you're in need of assistance because you're struggling. But you've been taking advantage of me and everyone else." Danny opens and shuts his lips, but no words come out. His thoughts are racing as he looks for a way out of this predicament. However, nothing is present. His shoulders slump as the consequences of his own behavior finally catch up with him. The conceit, the deceit, the manipulation. In this one instant, it all comes back to haunt him. I'm not finished yet, though. My tone somewhat softens as I turn to face my aunt and uncle, letting them know that this goes beyond Danny's trivial behavior. This was not something I wanted to have to do in front of everyone, I say in a stern yet calm voice. However, you have a right to know what has been happening behind the scenes. Danny has been attempting to use this family to further his own agenda, and now he believes that just because he is related to me, he can get me to give him money. I can see Danny's eyes expand in terror. That's not how I meant it. I had no intention of controlling anyone. Danny is stopped by me. In order to prevent him from weaseling his way out, I now interrupt my voice louder. It's precisely what you do. You deceive everyone around you into thinking that you are the victim of wrongdoing. When that fails, you try to make us feel bad by playing the family card. My uncle eventually speaks out, his voice tight with displeasure, after I let that settle in for a bit and let the full weight of my words hit the stillness stretches on thick and heavy. Is this not the first time you've behaved in this manner? His eyes narrow at Danny as he asks. Danny clenches his teeth and opens his mouth to object, but my uncle silences him with a raised hand. I take it that you have been doing this for some time? When it suits you, take advantage of people's kindness, play the victim, and use them. Danny doesn't answer. He is unable to. The words of my uncle linger. It was the last nail in the coffin of Danny's well-crafted facade. I pause, allowing the seriousness of the situation to sink in. Finally, it's over. Danny is no longer the innocent golden child. His armor has fractures that I can see, and they're just becoming wider. My aunt's eyes soften as she glances at me before he can reply. I didn't know any of this, Alex. I'm so sorry. We ought to have recognized earlier. She is obviously having difficulty reconciling the son she has known with the person in front of us, as seen by the trembling in her voice. Danny gives her a frantic glance, but she avoids his eyes. She's had enough. Now I feel like everyone is watching me, and I briefly question whether I've gone too far. However, I later see that this was necessary. The time had long come. Danny will not escape punishment for this. No more. And so long as he is forced to confront the repercussions of his behavior in front of everyone, then so be it. There is still a lingering stillness, but it is no longer awkward. It's anticipated. You can feel the tension in the room, and I'm certain Danny won't forget this event. I must mention one more thing, though. There is one more item that will ensure he fully comprehends the consequences of his conduct. Don't forget, Danny, I say in a quiet voice. Family members do not take advantage of one another in order to benefit one another. When you need something, it's about being honest, showing respect, and not acting like someone you're not. I wait for him to answer, but he has run out of things to say. I've made sure that everyone here is aware of who he is, and now the ball is in his court. My aunt then raises her voice once again. She spoke in a softer, more contrite tone now. Danny, we will have to discuss this later. Every one of us. I am aware that the words are definitive, and that nothing will be the same in the future, but for the time being, I let the stillness to weigh on me. At last, Danny pulls his chair back and stands up suddenly. He has a flushed face, eyes wide with embarrassment and fury. He gives me a last glance, but the fire he once possessed is vanished. A more agonizing item takes its place: knowledge. He is aware that he is lost. Furthermore, there is currently nothing you can do to correct it. He slams the door behind him as he leaves the room without further word. As though the tension in the air has been released, the home seems to release a collective breath. My aunt and uncle sat in startled silence, trying to make sense of what has just happened. My uncle Alex starts, his voice still full of incredulity. I didn't know. I ought to have been more focused. None of this was fair to you. I give a nod, a little constriction of my chest. Nobody should know everything, in my opinion. Uncle Mark, however, money wasn't the only factor. It was the way he has been treating me, controlling everyone around him, and believing that since we are related, he can get away with it. It had to end. My aunt lets out a sigh. She wipes her tears, her hands shaking. Alex, I'm so sorry. I had not before noticed it. I'll see to it that we discuss this, talk about it in depth. This family cannot continue in this manner until Danny settles down. I nod once again, keeping my eyes on the door from which Danny had left. I feel a feeling of relaxation for the first time in a long time, even though I know that this talk will not end there. Although it was a violent encounter, it was required. Then the supper was ended. I could see my aunt and uncle needed some time to comprehend what had just transpired, and nobody really had anything to say. Shortly after saying my goodbyes, I departed and went home, feeling a range of feelings. In the days that followed, I experienced a weird feeling of closure, in addition to my anger at Danny for everything he had done. Danny didn't get back to me. I was aware that was most likely the best option. The way the rest of the family began to treat me really got to me, but he needed time to deal with the consequences of his own behavior. My aunt and uncle weren't the only people who appreciated what I did. My cousins and other family members were involved. They sent me supportive messages and expressed gratitude for confronting him, knowing that I had the backing of Danny's family, who had witnessed his behind-the-scenes activities, made me feel less alone in this. In the end, Danny made contact, but it wasn't to express regret. He had a desire. It wasn't money, of course. Rather, he sought to control the issue once more by claiming that I was the one who had overreached myself. After what I did, he said, the family will never be the same, but to be honest, I didn't care. I didn't have to do all the repairs for him. It has nothing to do with him. It was about asserting my rights and letting him know that I would no longer allow him to take advantage of me. Nothing is flawless. Since that final try, I haven't heard anything from him, and I'm okay with that. Dealing with someone like Danny is difficult, but I've stated that I won't be a doormat. I'm simply relieved that my family is at peace for the first time in a long time, and that's the current situation. I have a question for everyone. How would you have responded to my predicament? Have I gone too far? Or was it necessary for this to occur? To be honest, I'm still processing things, so please share your ideas.